so I'm going to continue the case for side opposition, starting with a little bit of rebuttal of the points that we've heard from side government, and moving on to going back to ISDS and doing a little bit of rebuild on the impacts on the EU. So one of the things that we think on our side of the house is that the supply chain regulatory problems that were addressed by side government are not going to be like the United States still has regulations, Europe still has regulations. We don't think that, especially when resolving issues in one of these tribunals costs a minimum of $80 million, we don't actually think that this is going to help small and medium-sized businesses. We think that the US doesn't buy stuff from the EU, partially because of protectionist policies and tariffs, but also because we're not making and selling stuff that's cool, right? Like if we made iPhones, they would find a way to get the iPhones there. I'm very experienced in this because I'm from Canada. The only things after this like NAFTA thing, still the only things that we send to the United States are commodities and pop stars like Justin Bieber. And so, like, I think that, you know, okay, so, and this is like, this ties into the EU elitism thing, like we think that, like, there's a lot of evidence that the protectionism should be dealt with directly. We don't think that fear is a good reason to enter into trade agreements that are a bad deal for us, fear of other countries making trade agreements with the United States. And we don't think that this is transparent. We don't think that the process of creating TTIP is transparent. And furthermore, we don't believe that these ISDS tribunals are transparent because they're all behind closed doors, including the ones that was on the John Oliver show. So, to talk about ISDS. So, our real problem is that foreign businesses under this agreement end up with greater legal rights than domestic businesses. Okay, so American companies are going to be able to sue the Finnish government for when they think that a law disadvantages their businesses, but Finnish companies are not going to be able to pursue legal action against the Finnish government in this extra court that is only available for these multinational corporations. Why is this against our values? We think that as a matter of principle, companies are not entitled to the maximum amount of profit available under the version of the law that is most convenient to their business strategy, and that's what this allows. We think that any future laws could potentially be a target, and the threat effect that we've talked about on our side of the house is a real risk. We think that there's clearly value in protecting companies so that they are willing to go out and try to make a profit, but we think that so far we've actually been doing a fairly good job in Europe of doing that. And like, yes, the economy does grow and shrink, but in general, things are in the right direction now. Furthermore, we'd like to say that the Productivity Commission of Australia, which is the country that was noted as not having ISDS provisions with the United States, says that there is no compelling evidence that ISDS provisions actually increase investment. So it's probably not a risk that we'd like to take. There's a track record of these types of clauses having unforeseen consequences to the non-American counterparts, and we think that the extrajudicial, secretive nature of the arbitration is against our view of good governance. To go back to the topic of how we think the EU is getting shortchanged. Another good example of this is not just the privatization of the healthcare system, but also the fact that most EU countries continue to set prices on drugs. And we do this because it's really important for people to be able to access medications that are necessary for them to be able to handle their medical conditions. In the United States, we see that this isn't actually important to Americans, right? For them to be healthy, and it's more important for companies to be able to pursue corporate profits. And we think that this is one of these areas, from what we've read in the media, where the normative system in the TTIP is going to be one that's going to look more like the American system than it is like the present EU system, and we find that very troubling. We are also worried that the attempt by EU governments to lean away from privatization, as mentioned by Koskaniemi, will be punished under TTIP, and that they should have the ability to go back and forth between privatization and the public sector as they see fit, and that foreign companies should not be able to dictate this. We think that the TTIP in general is indicative of a shift towards corporate power in a significant way, and a shift away from parliamentary power. We think that because the normative systems are more likely to look like the American systems, we actually do have a lot to lose, and that we think that in a world where we do have to compromise we need to make sure that the things that we are compromising on are not detrimental to the well-being of our citizens.